Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us for the Ceres 2021 session, Investing in Natural Climate Solutions. I'm Meryl Richards, the moderator for today's session and a director on the Food and Forest team here at Ceres. Today's session focuses on the potential for natural climate solutions, which are a set of actions to conserve, restore, and improve land management with the goal of increasing carbon storage or reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Investors and companies are increasingly looking to natural climate solutions as a way to increase the ambition of their climate commitments. Today, we will hear from David Blood, co-founder and senior partner at Generation Investment Management, and Mary Grady, director of the Secretariat for the Architecture for REDD+ transactions. Our speakers will discuss how investors and companies are investing in natural climate solutions, evaluate best practices for corporate investment in natural climate solutions, and explore opportunities to bring these solutions to scale while maximizing benefits for the climate, people, and biodiversity.
Thank you, Meryl. I'm David Blood. I'm the senior partner of Generation Investment Management, and I want to share 5 key points today around natural climate solutions. First, I want to talk about why it's important. Secondly, what it is actually. Thirdly, 4 critical actions that we need to collectively consider. I also want to talk a little bit about the importance and the urgency of understanding carbon offsets or carbon compensation. And lastly, I want to just make the comment that we all agree, I'm sure, is that we're running out of time and there's urgency of action. So why is this important? Why are we here today? Well, first of all, NCS, Natural Climate Solutions, are an opportunity, they're a risk, and they're urgent. And they're potentially up to 30% of the solution to address the challenges of global warming and climate change. And frankly, we will not achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement without NCS. So what is NCS? It's, in effect, it's the protection, the improvement and restoration of land and natural systems alongside sustainably harvesting the resources we need. The 4 points that we as investors or we as participants in the NCS initiative or market need to consider are: 1, we need to at all times understand the urgency and the importance of protecting landscapes, forests, natural ecosystems. We need to think carefully about how we will improve natural ecosystems as well as forest and agriculture, and ensure that we are thinking carefully about how to develop regenerative models. We need to think about how we restore degraded lands as well as other natural vegetation and regeneration agriculture, broadly speaking. And we need to understand how we will be engaging in large-scale restoration of forests and wetlands. So protect, improve, restore. And lastly, we need to be sure that we're actively working with the local communities. It is absolutely critical that we understand how and work hard to ensure that NCS, Natural Climate Solutions, benefit local communities. They are indeed an opportunity to drive significant economic opportunities for millions of people around the world. Now, one critical question, and I know that Mary will be talking about this later, is we need to understand how the carbon offset market works and how what is now increasingly called the compensation regimes work. There's no question that they will be part of the NCS world and discussion, but they're not straightforward. And we must ensure, we absolutely must ensure, and again, I'm sure Mary will talk about best practice here, is that we drive a rigorous framework to ensure that whatever we do on carbon compensation, it helps drive the success of the net zero initiatives. And the last point I want to make, and I know everyone in the audience agrees with this, but we are really running out of time. We have basically 9 years to actively reduce our carbon emissions. We need to cut carbon emissions in half in the next 9 years. And that is going to mean we are going to have to be transformational. We're going to have to be uncomfortable at times. We're going to have to push on investment opportunities that we are not as certain about, but we must work hard to accelerate this transformation. And NCS, Natural Climate Solutions, will absolutely be a critical part of this transformation.
So, Mary, it's often said that forest protection is the most important natural climate solution. What does this mean exactly?
Well, all scientific reports that evaluate pathways to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees by mid-century conclude that natural climate solutions, and in particular the protection and restoration of forests, are critical to deliver near-term climate results at scale. About a quarter of all carbon on land is stored in tropical forests, but we're losing forests at the alarming rate of about 36 football fields every minute. Deforestation accounted for 8% of the world's annual CO2 emissions in 2018, which means that if tropical forests were a country, the emissions would rank just below the US and be significantly higher than the European Union. So according to analysis by the World Resource Institute and the Nature Conservancy, forests, together with other natural climate solutions, can deliver a third of the cost-effective mitigation results that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that we need by 2030. This is over 11 billion tons of CO2 annually, the equivalent of halting global oil consumption. The report also concludes that reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, known by its acronym of REDD, could deliver more than 40% of the total emission reductions, representing a gigaton scale mitigation opportunity. Unfortunately, the existing systems and public funding that have been put in place aren't sufficient to attain this scale, and reaching the goal will require mobilizing billions of dollars of additional annual investment from all sources, including from the private sector. Given the role that investments in REDD can play in supporting corporate net zero strategies and zero deforestation supply chain commitments, the private sector demand for investments in natural climate solutions is surging, and we really welcome this new interest.
So you've been working in and around environmental and carbon markets for almost 20 years. And there's been concern because some early efforts had some problems that led to concerns about integrity of carbon credits. But what lessons have we learned, and what's now considered best practice?
Well, we have learned an enormous amount over the past decade regarding technical approaches for quantification, monitoring, reporting, and verification of emissions and removals from the land use and forestry sector. We've also benefited from piloting of policy and structural mechanisms to reduce risks such as leakage, which is the displacement of the activity that's causing the emissions, reversals, which is when a natural event such as a fire or man-made event such as illegal logging releases the stored carbon back into the atmosphere, and also about double counting, which has to be avoided under the Paris Agreement. These learnings have led to an evolution in approaches to ensure the environmental and social integrity of REDD+. There has been a lot of experience that's been gained through project-based REDD, and some projects have delivered good results. However, project-level REDD activities have been primarily focused on avoiding deforestation and have been prone to over-crediting because they're not measuring the actual reductions in emissions from deforestation, rather the avoidance of deforestation emissions against a projected future baseline. Also, most projects don't accurately capture deforestation emissions that are outside of the project borders. So for example, even if the project is able to help avoid deforestation in a particular area, the activities driving the deforestation are often simply relocated to a neighboring area, and deforestation within that region or even nationally is actually increasing. And then in addition, because forest countries are reporting on their emissions and the achievement of their national emission reductions targets to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change under the Paris Agreement, and these emission reductions may receive either results-based payments or even be transferred to another country to meet its goals, it's critical that the accounting from the project level to the subnational and national level roll up accurately, or nest, as they say, within the jurisdictional accounting framework, so that emission reductions from reducing deforestation aren't being double counted, double issued, or double sold. So to address these issues with the project level accounting for avoided deforestation, there have actually been significant bilateral and multilateral government investments over the past decade to pilot programs to transition REDD to a jurisdictional scale. And And these programs have helped to build capacity in the forest countries and test different approaches for quantification and monitoring, but they really weren't designed to attract private capital at scale. And that's why we created the Architecture for REDD+ Transactions, or ART, that we launched last year.
That's really exciting. So could you briefly describe what ART is all about and how it addresses some of these credibility concerns and could reduce investor reputational and systemic risk?
Sure. So ART is a global voluntary carbon crediting program, or an architecture, to register, verify, and issue high-quality REDD emission reduction credits to countries and jurisdictions. ART's objective is to create confidence in the environmental and social integrity of REDD, to attract private sector capital at scale and contribute to the Paris Agreement goals. To achieve results at scale, there are a few key design features that we've incorporated into ART. So the first is that ART only credits governments and only at a jurisdictional level, and that is either at the national level or the large subnational level. This matters not only for achieving results at scale, but also because working at the jurisdictional level helps to mitigate some of the key risks inherent in project-based REDD that I described just a minute ago. So ART credits jurisdictions that reduce deforestation against a conservative historical baseline. So the results are real and verified to have already occurred. Also for jurisdictional crediting, the risk of leakage or this displaced emissions is reduced because a large area is being monitored as part of the subnational or national accounting area. And likewise, the risk of reversals is reduced because a singular event such as a fire or a pest infestation will have a smaller impact when measured within a large area. And also efforts to reduce emissions are longer lasting and more sustainable when forest communities are included and rewarded with enhanced livelihoods. Jurisdictional scale crediting also provides incentives to governments and supplier jurisdictions to do what really only governments can do, to regulate land use, enforce the law, recognize indigenous rights, and implement fiscal policies in the land sector. The second key design feature of ART is that ART's a standalone program, independent of governments or donor countries, and ART has standardized procedures for all participants. And this eliminates protracted negotiations in place of a more business-like transactional environment. And then the third design feature of ART is that ART is specifically designed to attract private capital. And private capital flows through markets, and markets need standardization so that the REDD credits are comparable among jurisdictions and fungible with emission reductions from other sectors. And in order to attract private capital, market participants need to have confidence in the integrity of the results. And that's really what we aim to provide.
So can you explain how the Architecture for REDD+ Transactions ART standard, trees, is different from what's gone before? And what do you see as its advantages from the point of view of suppliers, buyers, and also social and environmental integrity?
Sure. So this ART standard for the measurement, monitoring, reporting, and verification is called the REDD+ Environmental Excellence Standard. And so that acronym is TREES. And TREES reflects a decade of learning and evolution that I described previously. We had the benefit of developing TREES after the Paris Agreement came into force. So we consciously built on all the experience from all the pilot jurisdictional initiatives to create a program that's Paris aligned and incorporates market elements that provide confidence in results. So this includes standardized and conservative baselines, accounting requirements that enhance ambition over time, mitigation of leakage and reversal risks, fully embedded Cancun-aligned environmental and social safeguards, independent verification, avoidance of double counting, and the issuance and tracking of serialized units on a transparent registry. So these requirements allow the trees credits to be fungible in markets with credits from other sectors and to attract finance at the scale needed to protect and restore forests globally. This offers supplier countries the advantage of having clear expectations and streamlined requirements for crediting and the ability to access markets and private capital. The advantage for buyers is that given the rigor and standardization, the environmental and social integrity requirements, they can be assured of the integrity of the results.
And what about companies who might be exposed to deforestation in their supply chains and are needing to eliminate that deforestation? Could this help them meet their internal no deforestation commitments?
Definitely. So by collaborating on efforts to reduce deforestation, companies and the jurisdictions from which they source can each benefit from and enhance each other's efforts. This includes the creation of an enabling policy environment and investments in on-the-ground actions that affect real change at scale and adhere to appropriate social and environmental safeguards. Companies have options, right? So they may choose to invest in high-quality jurisdictional red credits from the same jurisdiction where they source. This increases the direct incentives to address the drivers of deforestation, accelerate forest protection, and drive transformational change. Companies could also choose to invest directly in activities that support the RED strategy of the jurisdiction and demonstrate quantifiable results. Either way, the jurisdictional participation in a RED Plus initiative such as ART can offer benefits to companies towards their zero deforestation commitments, including reduced monitoring costs and lower long-term reputational and performance risks. This is because TREES offers a rigorous and transparent measurement, monitoring, reporting, and verification framework for deforestation, degradation, and safeguards across the whole jurisdiction, providing companies with a greater confidence in the validity of the results of their investments to reduce deforestation, and that those results are really part of a landscape-wide solution.
So earlier you mentioned the Cancun safeguards, and I think this is really important because companies and investors want to ensure that investments in natural climate solutions to benefit the climate don't compromise and ideally benefit people and biodiversity as well. So how can companies ensure that the credits that they purchase are maximizing these benefits?
That's a great question. So one unique thing about ART is designed to assure strong social and environmental safeguards by embedding specific requirements in trees. The tree safeguard requirements were developed with international specialists in this area who basically unpacked the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Cancun safeguards to create requirements for crediting under ART that respect a country's sovereign rights, but also ensure the direct alignment of the UN safeguard information systems and reporting requirements. So the safeguards under trees include full and effective participation of all stakeholders in RED design and implementation. They ensure indigenous rights and access to justice. They protect natural forest, biological diversity, and ecosystems, and they enhance social and environmental benefits. All the ART participants follow the same safeguard requirements, ensuring consistency in application, and they're transparently reported in TREES documentation and independently audited as part of the verification process prior to TREES credit issuance. Participants can use their safeguards reporting to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change to demonstrate that they meet the ART safeguard requirements. So we're trying to eliminate redundancies in reporting and ensure alignment across systems.
Really fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us today, Mary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone so much for being with us today, and a special thanks to our speakers. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, I encourage you to check out the Natural Climate Solutions Investment Vision and the resource library at the address you see here. Ceres and the Institutional Investors Group on Climate Change will also be releasing a new investor brief on the role of natural climate solutions in corporate climate commitments, and we'll have a public webinar along with the launch. So look for that in late spring. I hope you enjoy the rest of Ceres 2021 Transform Tomorrow Today.